Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a big thunderstorm event which is going to be taking place over the south central and southeastern United States for today, and we might even have a couple thunderstorms popping up over parts of the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast as well. We're going to be seeing a big squall line or almost near a derecho type of event that's going to be heading through parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, even stretching into parts of southern Georgia and northern Florida. We're going to be tracking all of that and more in today's video. We already have a moderate risk of severe weather in place for a lot of these areas in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. So we already are off to an active start. Some thunderstorms are already popping up over parts of the southeast and parts of Texas and Oklahoma as well. So let's get right into it. Here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like, and it is currently quite inactive for the eastern half of the country. It's a little bit more active out further to the west. So we have some red flag warnings in effect for the southwest as well as for parts of the Dakotas. We have some wind advisories and some high wind warnings scattered throughout parts of the Central Plains and also into a little bit of southern Idaho as well. We have, I believe those are freeze warnings in effect for one county in Colorado, and some freeze watches in effect for southwestern Oregon, and some more winter weather advisories up for the Cascades in parts of central Washington state. And then you can also see a few of those severe thunderstorm warnings from the severe weather, that first round of severe weather that's moving through parts of the Panhandle of Florida as well as southern Georgia as of right now. Yesterday, the high temperature was in Falcon Lake, Texas, where they got to 105 degrees Fahrenheit for the national high temperature. The national low temperature was in Peter Sinks, Utah. They got to 6 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest precipitation report yesterday, or the highest rainfall report yesterday, was 3.2 inches of rain in Callion, Arkansas, and 14 miles southwest of Heart Butte, Montana. They got 8 inches of snowfall reported, and that's in northwestern Montana in some of the higher elevations. So here's what the current mesoscale discussion looks like from the Storm Prediction Center. They issued this about a few minutes ago, just about 10 to 15 minutes ago as of when I'm recording this. So in this brown area, they are talking about potentially some scattered thunderstorms that could be intensifying by 1 to 3 p.m. local time, which would be central time, and they are indicating that there could be the risk for potentially large and damaging hail, all within this brown circled area right now. There isn't any storms right in this area, but eventually we will see some thunderstorms probably right around, again, that 1 to 3 p.m. time frame start to move through these areas. If we look at what the current radar looks like, you can see that we have a lot of action, especially back through southern Georgia and the Panhandle of Florida, where we actually have some rather strong gusty thunderstorms, but this is not even the main big deal. We actually had very robust storms moving through southern Alabama, the western Panhandle of Florida this morning. Now that those storms are back further to the east, but that is, again, not the main threat. What's really worrying and what we really want to pay attention to is what's back here through Arkansas, Texas, and a little bit of southeastern Oklahoma, because these storms have the potential to be a lot more tornadic. They have the chance for much larger hail, and we already have a very high chance of wind. Actually, the Storm Prediction Center issued a 45% chance of wind damage in parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. I believe also a little area of Arkansas as well. So here's what the day one outlook looks like from the Storm Prediction Center. You can see that much of basically anywhere east of the Mississippi River and even parts of the south central United States, anywhere east of there basically is covered under some shade of storm risk, except if you live in parts of the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, or a little bit of Florida as well. But for much of the eastern United States, you guys are covered in some sort of risk of storminess. So you see we have a slight risk of severe weather in that yellow region there, and you can also see that one additional area of slight risk in parts of North Carolina and Virginia. We'll have to keep our eye on that. An enhanced risk of severe weather back through Dixie Alley and then up through into parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas as well. And then we also have a moderate risk of severe weather, which this is probably our third or fourth, maybe even fifth moderate risk or higher that they've issued this year. which is very, very rare, way above what's typical, but it goes to show you how active this severe weather season is. Typically, in a normal severe weather year, which this definitely is not because it's been so active, in a normal severe weather year, we would see maybe 1, 2, 3 moderate risks, maybe 4 if we get a little bit more storms than normal. But this year, we probably already have 4 or 5, and it's only early April by this point. So we're already off to a very, very active start, and this is just one more storm system that's adding to that total. If we look at tomorrow, you can see that we have a general thunderstorm risk all through parts of the eastern United States. We have that marginal risk, which spans up through parts of the Tennessee and Ohio valleys and then down through into parts of the southeast, with a little area of slight risk, which covers parts of Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and also into Louisiana. And then if we look for Sunday, you can see that that risk area goes all along the East Coast except for into areas in New England. Those areas get cut out of the risk area, but that's where we have a general thunderstorm risk, and then we have a marginal risk of severe weather back through the coastal Carolina, southern Georgia, and northern and central Florida as well. So here's what the simulated radar is looking like, and this is what the NAM model is showing, and this is basically showing you what the radar is expected to look like through time. So as we go later on today and even into tomorrow morning. So this would be by right around 1 p.m. Central Time today. So right around an hour, half an hour from when I'm uploading this video and when most of you guys are going to be watching this. We're seeing potentially some scattered storms moving through parts of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma. We're actually already seeing more storms than this, so it's already ramping up faster than what we're expecting. So that could be an indicator that we're going to actually see a lot more or a little bit more severe weather than what's actually being expected on some of these models. If we continue this forward, you do start to see that unfortunately some tornadic-looking storms could start to set up, because we do have these individual supercells that are developing over northern Louisiana, as well as a squall line potentially up through Arkansas. Those types of storms are the ones that really spawn up the tornadoes. Of course, when you have a huge squall line that covers multiple states, you could be seeing a few tornadoes embedded within there, but you're not going to see a huge tornado form out of a squall line. You really, when you're looking for tornadoes, you want to see a little tiny area of intense rainfall followed by some more lighter or moderate rainfall to the side of it. And we see that in parts of southern Arkansas and northern Louisiana. So that is worrying in terms of the threat for tornadoes that could develop. You move this forward a little bit more, and we're getting to right around, this would be right around 7 p.m. Central Time today, and we're dealing with a lot of heavy rainfall and potentially tornadic and thunderstorm moving throughout parts of Mississippi and Louisiana, with also some storms back through parts of Arkansas and Oklahoma by this point. And this is when it's really going to start ramping up. So if we go a little bit further on, this is by 10 p.m. Central Time today. We have these storms in basically, I would say, 3 or 4 different lines of storms. So you have that first line back through parts of Texas. We have another line back through Arkansas and another one through Mississippi, even a couple more that are back further to the north. So in total, you count it up, it's probably 4 or 5 different lines of storms, but they're going to start to merge together. And this is not looking good so far, because it does look like this is going to be a rather intense line of storms. So right now we have these storms with so much instability in the atmosphere, and we're going to take a look at this in just a little bit, but we have so much instability, CAPE values that are approaching 5,000, even 5,500 in some of these areas. That's an insane amount of CAPE, and because of that, the thunderstorms won't really be restricted too much, and you're going to end up seeing a couple rounds of different storms. So you're going to see this first round out ahead of this in Louisiana and Mississippi. The second round is still back in Arkansas as we're moving through about 1 in the morning tomorrow morning Central Time, and we're looking at a lot of gusty, strong storms rolling throughout parts of the south central and southeastern United States. It really starts to strengthen into one or a couple defined strong lines of thunderstorms. So this is where we could see a couple tornadoes spawn up on the lead edge of this, mainly a wind threat with a little bit of a large hail as well back through into western Mississippi, eastern Louisiana by this point. This is by 4 in the morning Central Time. Then as we're moving this forward, you can see how it fully forms forms into a line of storms. You have basically just one huge line from northern Alabama down through southern and southeastern Louisiana. So it's a huge derecho type of event. Might not reach the exact criteria, but it's going to look like a big squall line, basically moving through parts of western Alabama, southern Mississippi, southern Louisiana, and that's very intense rainfall along with a lot of gusty winds as well. So this is by 7 in the morning Central Time. And then as we head a little bit further on, this is by 10 in the morning Central Time, 11 in the morning Eastern Time, and you can see that that squall line is mainly back through parts of the Panhandle, Florida, and southern Alabama by this point. Mainly just rainfall with a bit of thunder back to the north. Nothing really too convective up there by this point. So it's starting to wrap up. Luckily, it is weakening by this point, but we still have a big problem here with all of this severe weather. So you can see that by this would be right around 4 p.m. Tomorrow Central Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're dealing with a lot of mainly just light to moderate rainfall, I would say, back through Georgia and the Panhandle of Florida. If you will be boating tomorrow, you do want to watch out, especially if you live back through the eastern Gulf of Mexico, or if you're going to be boating throughout that area, because there could be some issues, especially in the waters, with all that thunderstorm activity. And then you can see that line of storms moves through, mainly non-convective by that point, and it's not posing too much of a risk. Here's that rainfall outlook, and you can see that the NAM model is producing a lot of rainfall, up to 3 to 4 inches of rainfall up in these areas in northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, and southern Arkansas, and then another area with heavy rainfall along the Gulf Coast in the Panhandle of Florida, southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, and southern and central Louisiana, where even some of those areas getting up closer to 5 or 6 inches of rainfall, unfortunately. So we do have flooding threats with this event, unfortunately. If we look at the Cape, this is really crazy amounts of CAPE, where you have CAPE, which basically stands for Convective Available Potential Energy. It's basically just a way to measure how much energy is in the atmosphere. Typically, I like to use a threshold of 500 CAPE and above. You can get a decent thunderstorm. Once you get above 1,000 CAPE, that's when you can get a fairly good put together thunderstorm. If you're above 2,000, you're really looking at a fairly robust thunderstorm. And we see CAPE values that are well above 2,000, well above 1,000, and way above that 500 threshold. They're up near 5,000 in that dark red, even a little bit of purple popping up in parts of Louisiana there. So very, very high amounts of CAPE. It's almost on the very, very top part of the scale. And this is what the storms are going to be using to kind of develop and form into this big squall line. So this is what the dew points look like, and these are all above that 60-degree threshold that you typically need. You can see that we have dew points up as far up into the 70s, the low 70s. So that's very, very high, and it's going to be a very uncomfortable day if you're going to be working outside tomorrow, if you're just going to go outside tomorrow, because or actually later today into tomorrow morning, because it's going to be very, very muggy and humid later this afternoon, with dew points up near 70 and temperatures up in the mid 80s. So really not a nice day to be going outside. Plus you have the thunderstorm threat later on in the day. So we have dew points in the 70s. That's going to help fuel these storms as well. And then if we go a little bit further into tomorrow in the early afternoon, we still have ample dew points back through parts of Florida, Georgia, and maybe even up into the Carolinas, with dew points all up through the 60s, even up into the upper 60s in some of these areas. So we could still see a little bit of a longer duration event, even spanning into Florida and Georgia, even by the early afternoon tomorrow. If we look at the high temperatures, you're going to see that we are in the 80s throughout this little area in Louisiana and Mississippi, as well as even up through eastern Arkansas. We have 80s also back through parts of the Carolinas and Georgia, and 80s also for Florida there. And then in between, we have temperatures in the 70s, but still, even that is well above what you would need to make a thunderstorm and really have a good thunderstorm prosper. So really no worries in terms of the amount of moisture, energy, or temperatures. If we go to tomorrow, you can see that we have temperatures that are going to be even warmer over some of these areas. All along the coastal southeast, we're dealing with temperatures up through the 80s, so still very, very warm in those areas. Here's the precipitable water, and you can see that if this is basically just showing you how much water is in the atmosphere columns, in the column of the atmosphere, and basically if you were to squeeze all the water and moisture out of the atmosphere, this is how much rainfall you would get all at once if you were to squeeze all of it out at once. And you can see that we have values getting up close to 2 inches, which is very, very high relative to this time of year. And this is corresponding with the area just ahead of the cold front and right ahead of the squall line. So you can see that we have a very dynamic type of event. And if we look at the sounding of this storm, and I just took a sounding from right down in this point in Louisiana, right here in central Louisiana, you can see that they are that this is indicating, the NAM model is showing that we could potentially have, and I'll actually change the color so you can see it. We are talking about potentially PDS tornadoes, potentially particularly dangerous situation tornadoes. You can also see that tornadoes, if you were to have tornadoes, they would probably be on the scale of a high-end EF3 or maybe a middle or low-end EF4. So that's very, very worrying. You can see in the pink, this is the line basically of the intensity of the storm, and you can see that we do have potentially the threat of seeing EF4s, maybe EF3s, and definitely EF2s are possible with this type of setup. And you can also see with the storm slinky that we are seeing a lot of shear, especially up further up in the atmosphere, where you can see the base kind of curves a little bit as you get higher up in the atmosphere. So all of this is pointing towards a fairly convective type of event with a lot of moisture, a lot of energy, high dew points, high temperatures as well. All of this is coming together to form a rather robust, intense, and vicious type of storm that we are going to be covering and tracking for you guys. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.